Hi, I'm Jeff Murrah, and I want to welcome you to True Texas History. Today, we're going to be looking at lessons from the history of the Texas Rangers. And the Texas Rangers I'm talking about in this instance is the law enforcement Texas Rangers. In the news lately, there's been all this stuff about defund the police and so forth. Well, let's take a look at Texas history and see if we have any lessons that we can learn that would apply to the situation. Because if you don't learn from history, you end up repeating it. With the Texas Rangers, there have been times in our history that they weren't in existence. And let's take a look at those. Shortly after the Republic became a state, they thought, we don't need the Rangers anymore. Let's disband them. Because when the Rangers were around, we were able to patrol the borders and maintain order, and do so at a considerably less cost than once Texas joined the Union. Of course, once Texas joined the Union, they had to build a whole system of forts to deal with the frontier and the Indians. Fort Belknap, Fort Worth, there's quite a few of them. And the cost went way up. Now, one of the problems with the cost in negotiating joining the Union, they said, okay, we'll pay for the United States told us we'll pay for border protection. Well, it wasn't until Sol Ross became governor of Texas and he had to literally sue them to get them to pay. But that didn't happen till many years later. So the Rangers were a more cost-effective way of maintaining order. People got tired of the lawlessness that started developing along the border, so the Rangers were reconstituted shortly before the war between the states, and they kept order and maintained peace there on the border during some uncertain times. And then at the end of the war, when we were part of a military district and not considered a state anymore, they disbanded the Rangers again. And what started happening in the mid-1860s? Well, we had outlaws like Sam Bass, the James Gang, etc., that were running rampant. And after Reconstruction, the Rangers were reconstituted, and they played a valuable role in maintaining order in the state. Now, at times, some of their methods were a little harsh. Those were harsh times. You had a lot of tough hombres, and tough hombres call for tough solutions. Now, during the 1930s, we had a situation where we had a governor, Governor Miriam Ferguson, who tended to pardon criminals. At one point, she was pardoning them at 100 a month, and the Rangers were furious about that because she showed such a blatant disregard for law and order. And what ended up happening, many of them ended up resigning over the matter, and some of the others, when she was reelected, ended up being fired. And she fired them for partisanship because they had supported her opponent for governor, and she wasn't going to stand for that, so she fired the whole bunch. But what happened? Well, you started having people like Bonnie and Clyde, and many of the oil towns started booming. A lot of lawlessness came along, and so, with the likes of these Governor Ferguson, it was approached, like Frank Hamer and so forth. Please come back, please come back. And the Rangers came back. They restored order. They didn't put up with foolishness. So, and strangely enough, this whole thing of defund the police, that type of mindset, let's get rid of the Rangers. People were trying to get rid of the Texas Rangers back in the 1970s. They took out ads in New York newspapers. This is nothing new. And history shows that any time that we have gotten rid of the Rangers or the Rangers were not on duty, lawlessness tended to prevail in Texas. They serve a purpose. And when you're dealing with criminals, a lot of times things are not very pretty. And sometimes the politicians behind the Rangers weren't very pretty either in terms of some of the things that they did. But I'm not going to get into that in this episode. I just wanted to take a look at the times that we did not have the Texas Rangers, what started happening in Texas, because they have not always been popular, but they have always been needed. And they served a definite purpose. And anytime they have not been here, Texas has paid a heavy price. And so I think that in terms of wanting to defund things, we really need to learn some lessons from history and see what happens when those types of policies are put into place. And the outcome has never been very good. So I hope you enjoyed this. I do deal with these topics in my book. Hold on. Texans Always Move Them. True History of Texas. You can order it at TexansAlwaysMoveThem.com. If you have any questions, suggested topics for future items, feel free to leave the comments below. And we'll talk to you later. Until then, vaya con Dios. Goodbye.